Hello guys, it's me Simo Orahara, and in this video we'll talk about why ICHIBEI was lying about some of the things he said to YHWACH, so that we'll compare the scenes that Ichigo and YHWACH have seen with what was stated in the novel, since ICHIBEI was the one who also spoke there about the matter. And so that we can be objective, I'm not saying that ICHIBEI lied about everything. He may have lied about some things for a good purpose that may become clear later, or may have lied because he is actually a deceitful and has a dark side about what happened to Reio. Meaning, we must put all the possibilities on the table. And the reason why ICHIBEI is suspicious is that he is the only person who was there during that period of time in which Reio appeared, and also was there when Reio was sealed. It is true that he said he didn't witness the incident directly, but he was present at the time, meaning that he is the only remaining witness from that era. Therefore, it is logical not to take everything he said as a fact, since he is the only source of what happened. I know that the Tsunayashiro also had some history, but the Tsunayashiro and ICHIBEI have the same goals. So it's the same. Anyway, let's focus about ICHIBEI because he told us the story through different methods. The first one, it is found in a novel when he was with the rest of the members of their squad and he began to tell them the story of Reio, the nobles, and the words of BLEACH. The second way is through the glimpses that we have seen in the scenes of Ichigo and YHWACH. And let's start with what ICHIBEI said in the novel. He said that Reio was using his power to destroy the hollows and turn them into sand. The hollows who were eating humans, and they were the ones who made the world went to the stagnation mode. And so Reio was destroying them. However, as ICHIBEI said, what Reio did wasn't enough to stop the chaos the world was going through. And here where the ancestors of the noble families will intervene. They saw the world is not a good world anymore. And as you can see, ICHIBEI didn't mention at all the point of view of Reio. Just what the ancestor wanted and saw and decided. And they had one common goal, which was that they should divide the world, so that death and life would be separated. And here where ICHIBEI lied to YHWACH, because his words were clear that those who wanted to divide the original world were the ancestors. But when he spoke with YHWACH in the flashback, YHWACH asked him a direct question about who wanted to separate death and life and divide the world. ICHIBEI lied and said, it's Reio. But in the novel he said something else. The nobles were the ones who had those visions and used Reio's power only for that purpose, to divide the world. Therefore, I wonder why ICHIBEI didn't tell YHWACH the full truth. Or did ICHIBEI already know that telling YHWACH the truth wouldn't change anything? I don't know. On the other hand, let us continue with ICHIBEI's story in the novel. ICHIBEI says that when the ancestors wanted to divide the world, they needed Reio's power. And to do that, Shiba's ancestor wanted to convince him, but the matter ended with Tsunayashiro sealing Reio and put him inside a crystal. ICHIBEI says that he didn't witness that event directly, so that everything that happened after that is considered the beginning of the history of the Soul Society. When Reio was sealed, and ICHIBEI then talked about what Reio's desire might be, so that as a matter of fact, Reio didn't resist, meaning he accepted his destiny. Then he added that the Tsunayashiro's ancestor wasn't satisfied with that, and his fears were still present that Reio can turn against them someday, so that they throw him into a spiral between death and life. And then they cut off his arms, and then ICHIBEI added that they spent some time removing the rest of his organs, such as his heart and legs. But in the anime, this story is a little bit different. If we want to match with what was stated in the novel and the anime scenes, then the anime scenes happened after Reio was sealed in the crystal. That is, when they sealed him in the crystal, Tsunayashiro along with two other people decided to take Reio from the crystal and put him in that water. Because in these lines from the novel, ICHIBEI says that the ancestors threw Reio into a contradictory spiral between death and life. And this scene, we can see Reio in the middle of it. The only difference between the novel and the anime is that in the novel, ICHIBEI said that they cut off only his arms. The other limbs were cut off later. In the anime, we have seen both the arms and legs. Therefore, we don't know whether the two events occurred at the same time or in a separate times. But what I believe is that ICHIBEI was present during that process. He mentioned that he didn't see how they sealed Reio for the first time and put him in the crystal, but he didn't deny that he saw how they cut Reio's body. Especially when we have these new scenes in which he appears holding Reio. So it seems to me that as the cutting process was completed and Reio's main organs were removed, it seems that ICHIBEI was the one who returned him to his place, to the crystal. So I think maybe the ancestors used Reio's arms for some time and after a while ICHIBEI took them for himself. How? I don't know. But what we have as a fact is that Reio's left arm was with ICHIBEI. Speaking of this matter, the novel has this paragraph that talks about the right and the left arm. Of course, what is being said here does not seem to be ICHIBEI's words. But when we read about Bernida, we can see that it has its own will, and also it joined YHWACH's army, and it considers itself a quincy from the start, wanting the world to return to how it was before. And as you can see, the novel never mentioned that the arm was originally with ICHIBEI and he was the one who gave it to YHWACH, and it was the main reason for closing his eyes. And all it was mentioned is that it joined YHWACH's army and also followed the same will of him. Therefore, if we notice ICHIBEI's words in the novel, he only kept talking about the nobles being responsible for what happened to Reio, so that he linked everything between Reio and the nobles. He didn't mention to the rest of the Zero Squad members the scene of him carrying Reio, and he didn't mention to them that he had the king's left hand and he used it to close his eyes. So that I found it the same thing he did with YHWACH when he avoided telling him the truth that the matter was not the desire of Reio, but rather of the ancestors. So guys, what do you think about what ICHIBEI said both in the two stories, the two sides of the story, the scenes that we have seen of YHWACH and Ichigo, also what was stated in the novel? Did you see any differences between the two sides of the story? Because if you noticed, the vision that YHWACH saw, there is an additional scene, which Ichigo didn't see. And I'm talking here about ICHIBEI holding Reio. When I was talking to one of my friends about this scene, he mentioned something interesting. He said to me, what if the left hand was the one that wanted to show you about the last scenes, to let him know that ICHIBEI has also a part of what happened to Reio, and not only the ancestors? Because I wonder what would have been the reaction of Ichigo if he saw the scene of ICHIBEI. I don't know guys, tell me your opinions and see you in my next video.